We're edging ever closer to becoming one of the very few countries in the world to bear the full brunt of the US Trump administration's 30% tariff slap. Well, can a last-minute phone call from President Cyril Ramaphosa curry favor and land a new US-SA trade deal? Well, our tariff man, top business journalist William Brederode and I are certainly holding our breaths. He joins me in the studio now here in Cape Town. William, thanks so much for joining the lead. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Graham. Important topic.
Yeah, 100%. Look, as it stands, when exactly does Trump's tariffs take effect, right? This can has sort of been kicked down the road for like the longest time now. We thought it was all going to go full steam ahead 1 August, but where do we stand at the moment?
So the short answer is 1 minute past midnight on 8 August, which is Friday, right? That's the short answer. This becomes a bit of a mess because it's like kind of a different rule for goods which left before then but are still on the water and they need to arrive within like 2 months. But let's keep it simple. Friday.
Okay.
And well, a minute past midnight is US time. So I think it ends up being like 6 o'clock odd in the morning our time, but Friday.
But I did read somewhere that apparently the boats that needed to export the last goods from South Africa had to leave by the 1st of August in order to meet a certain deadline. Is that right?
No.
Oh, so it doesn't matter.
1 August was when the 30% got announced for us, and a whole bunch of other countries got their tariff percentage.
Okay.
And the further delay was a week from 1 August, where I thought it might be 7, but it turns out yesterday at a briefing the minister said 8 August is what we're aiming for.
All right.
So to my mind, at least, it's 8 August. Don't shoot me if it's 7.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to go with 8 August.
We're going to go with 8.
William
even the fact that this is such a mess is perhaps indicative of how poorly it's all been communicated.
Right.
So let's hope. Well, yeah, maybe he'll kick it down the road again.
Yes.
But 8 August.
Okay. 8 August is where it stands. Okay. What are the main sort of industries? And let's just remind our listeners, I know we had the big, beautiful Trump explainer with William Brederode, and of course we dealt with many of these things, but perhaps somebody listening for the first time, what are those key local industries that are going to affect South African business the hardest? Agriculture.
Agriculture, the main one. The automotive sector, and then it ends up becoming confusing because there's a whole bunch of things which you wouldn't necessarily think of. Shipbuilding. I got in touch with last week a company which makes doors and sends doors to the US and employs 350 people on the export side of its business, and is now at serious risk of, those jobs are potentially on the line. So the big ones is automotive manufacturing, agriculture, specifically citrus and nuts.
Macadamia nuts,
Macadamia nuts.
Just remind everybody that obviously we're one of the biggest exporters in the world, right?
Well, we are the largest producer of macadamia nuts in the world. We've overtaken Australia, which is actually where macadamia nuts come from, believe it or not. That's where they're indigenous. And we produce more than they do. Huge success story. And coincidentally, last week, a body within the US Department of Agriculture put out a report saying that Australia is expected to overtake us in terms of competitiveness in the US market for macadamia nuts, because Australia has 10% and we've got 30%. So we're not going to be able to compete on that basis, according to this US report.
And they take a hell of a long time to grow, right?
Well, that's actually fascinating. So it takes 10 years plus minus for a planted tree to reach full bearing. Some macadamia trees have produced nuts for 200 years, but you can roughly say 40 years that they'll produce nuts for. So tough in an industry like that to adjust to a short-term shock like this when you've got something in the ground which is going to produce nuts for you for potentially 40, 50, 60 years.
Sure.
So a whole wide range of industries will be affected. The ones to keep in mind are predominantly agriculture and the automotive sector.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, there's certain mineral exports which will be affected. But luckily, for the most part, we've been spared on that count.
Right.
Which is the largest share of our trade to the US. So I think at the briefing yesterday, Minister Ronald Lamola from DERCO said it's around 35% of our exports to the US that are exempt from the tariffs. And
that's a lot.
For the most part, you can think of that as being platinum group metals, PGMs.
Yeah.
That's the biggest chunk that's exempt and that we send to them.
And historically, that's been the case for a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of how South Africa built its wealth to some extent.
Yes. And that's what the US wants from us, right? Remains mineral resources on the whole.
That's what I think that's one of the important imports for the US. But when it comes to what they want for us in the Trump administration, it's more so a market for US goods in South Africa. That's become the more important side of the import-export equation, is the US wants a market for its poultry and its pork, I think, is one of the ones
pork
that's
has
been mentioned.
Come up quite a bit.
I'm sure for manufactured goods as well, because Trump's whole ploy is to try and get jobs in the US, in those sorts of industries.
Make America great again, William.
There we go.
Oh my word! That's been part of a parcel of his administration since the get-go. Okay, so look, the 30% tariff duty that the US is imposing on us, we're one of, correct me if I'm wrong here, 11 countries in the world that share that, sort of medal, if you will, that we're in that group of 11 countries only that are getting this 30% tariff, the highest in the world.
We're not the highest in the world. So I don't actually know exactly how many countries are above us. Switzerland is the one which has made all the headlines because they're on 39%. So I think there's Panic at the Disco in Switzerland.
Yeah, in Zurich.
In Zurich.
Mm-hmm.
But when I checked the list, I think the 30% was roughly the sixth or seventh highest tariff, which is what makes modeling this so difficult. Is it's not just about the tariff we've got, but it's the tariff that our key competitors and the things we send to the US have got. So a good example is ships, where we make catamarans, a lot of catamarans. And our biggest competitor in that market is France. And France has got a 15% tariff for exports to the US, and we've got 30%. So from a product which benefited from zero duties under AGOA, we're now at a comparative disadvantage to France when it comes to the US market.
Sure. Yeah, okay. But Lesotho and Eswatini, which I found super fascinating. Lesotho at one stage, of course, Trump has famously didn't even know it was a country, and then slapped 50% on them. And then we saw another headline, Eswatini's now taking, former convicted criminals in the US as sort of like expats, new citizens there. And those two countries, relatively small, but our neighbors, have managed to negotiate new deals with the Trump administration. And we haven't.
Wild, hey. And I mean, Lesotho was warning of economic collapse under the 50% tariff. And I think that's largely textiles. There's obviously that story that got quite popular about the fact that Trump-branded golf shirts were made in Lesotho. And somebody went and spoke to those factory workers. So it's not clear to me exactly how they struck the deal, but yes, they've been taken down from the 50% tariff that was heading their way and are now on 15.
Both 15%.
I don't know about Eswatini.
Okay.
I know Lesotho is now on 15.
All right. Okay. But they've negotiated new deals and
they got a reduction.
Yes.
They got a big reduction, which I'm sure they're overjoyed about.
And they didn't have to go to the White House
No.
with a big delegation.
No. And
to try and disprove, false
genocide accusations
about South Africa. Correct.
Well, maybe that's the benefits of being a slightly quieter neighbor.
How close are we, though, in Pretoria to signing a deal with Washington at this stage? Because that's where we're currently sitting. Is 12 minutes to midnight. What's happening?
So, unfortunately, the answer there is we don't know, and we haven't known for a while. The message coming out of the DTIC and DIRCO are, well, DTIC is more our lead negotiating department, is that they tabled a deal for the US's consideration. The first iteration of the deal was put on the table on the 20th of May, so a long time already, just before the infamous Oval Office meeting. It's not entirely clear what happens next. A week ago or 2 weeks ago, Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen said that we got feedback on that initial deal. We were told it's not ambitious enough, and we revised it and put a slightly more ambitious offer on the table. The word from then is that there's been radio silence from the US on that deal. It's not a no. It's not a maybe. It's not a yes. It's you're not gonna know.
Yeah.
We're not.
Is it a blue tick or a gray tick?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it leans towards a single tick.
Wow.
Single tick to gray.
Message has been said.
Maybe it's blue. Maybe it's just been left on red.
That's possibly worse.
So that's the frustrating situation we find ourselves in, where we don't know how close we are to a deal, because the word out of our officials is that we're not getting feedback on the offer we have tabled. And there's this framework,
the template,
yes,
for all African countries are going to get
all
this
African countries that it was the reason we asked for an extension over a month ago now. And it seems like our officials are still waiting for the template, but the template's not coming. So huge question marks over what's happening with the negotiations, but the official word is that we're waiting.
Yeah, I wonder if the template would be like Trump's initial letter of the 30% to South Africa, which was basically just something that he downloaded on Microsoft Word and wrote up and filled in the blanks and whatever the case may be. I'm joking to all you Trump supporters out there. Anyway, okay, right. But Trade Minister Parks Tau, he was very quiet in the Oval Office when the trade delegation went over with President Cyril Ramaphosa. I don't think he said a word, but now this time he's been left with the big task of trying to mitigate and offset the extent of the 30% blow that is apparently already happening to South African businesses. We're already seeing sort of early reports, headlines of some businesses losing contracts in the run-up to this. And that obviously equates to business lost and a cost on the business and how much they forfeit in terms of their books. What are the local range of measures that Mr. Parks Tau's office has now come up with? One of them is like a help desk to help inform local exporters.
So there's a couple, and the help desk is actually the most set in stone one that we have information about. So maybe a good disclosure is just to say that Minister Tau said he would present more information on the support package tomorrow, actually, at Parliament.
Right, the 6th of August.
The 6th of August. And there's also some impact assessment work that needs to go underway before they set in stone the support measures. So they need to work out exactly who's affected and how badly before they decide the measures that are put in place. Regardless, the one which is most set in stone is the help desk, which was created last week Friday, which date would have been 1 August.
And it's received some calls already?
Received some calls already, allegedly mostly from companies which are based in the Western Cape and export to the US, and allegedly the support that's been provided is just factuals. what happens to goods that are on the water? When must they be sent by? Is the product that I sent exempt or not? That's the nature of the work that the support desk has done so far, seemingly. But as I understand it, the intention is actually to help impacted countries access new markets. So that's the type of support that it wants to provide.
Right.
So that's the first step. The DTIC said
block exemptions.
So very vague at this point, but
yeah, I found that very vague.
Essentially, the proposal is to allow exporters to coordinate and collaborate their activities so that they can be more competitive in international markets.
That's kind of like under the help desk.
Yeah, but I suppose the slight difference is that that collaboration might violate sections of the Competition Act, and the proposal is to exempt some companies, I don't know exactly who, from sections of the Competition Act so that they can collaborate to be more competitive. So
sounds like the Starlink situation a little bit.
Yeah, it's like maybe a little bending of the rules to ease the blow. But details of that still very unclear. Then there was a proposal to make available funds from a localization fund.
And the transformation fund, the 100 billion rand one.
The 100 billion rand transformation fund to support exporters opening up new markets. Literally on the transformation fund, it was a line in the briefing yesterday, one sentence. So remains desperately unclear how much funds will be available to support exporters, who would qualify, under what conditions, etc., etc. But seemingly some support in the works there. And then the DTIC has also said that it's in discussions with Treasury about potential, I must get the word right. It's either tax breaks. Should I quickly check?
Tax incentives.
Tax incentives.
Right.
Tax incentives for affected industries. But that obviously then depends on Treasury's willingness to offer those. I also asked Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen 2 weeks ago, I phrased it as subsidies. Would you ever consider subsidies for South African agricultural exports to help them through this? And he said, absolutely not. So on the agricultural front, that doesn't look too likely.
How does he answer the phone? Does he go, it's this William guy?
No, I was actually in person. I went up to him after a conference, and he was, to be fair to him, quite generous with his time.
Okay, but there's also this big talk now of opening new markets, and obviously, whilst we could also face, the 10% extra slap because, of course, we're part of the S in BRICS. We want to do a lot more business with China, according to the Minister, Parks Tau. And of course, we do already a lot of business with them. But he's also quite cautious. He's like, I don't want to quote unquote open the floodgates too much, because to my mind's eye, reading all of this is, in actual fact, that's one of the theories or arguments that goes that, this is one of the things that led to like Brexit, for example. And it's one of the things that led to Trump imposing tariffs in the first place, is the flood of Chinese goods into markets, undercutting local suppliers there, and then, creating all sorts of economic, effects and downturns, etc. And here we're sort of messing with that idea as well. But look, the US is not really coming to the table in terms of the trade deal, so obviously we were going to turn to China, right?
Well, it's I kind of think not opening the floodgates is a good strategy, and I think maybe pre-Trump that's what we would have expected, but maybe he's flipped the table a little bit. So what Minister Tau said is that China has offered a free trade deal to all African countries bar one, but that's will only come into effect on condition of signing an agreement. And what the minister was explaining in the briefing is that an agreement would require us to take more products from China and in exchange, China would take more products from us. So he made the point that before signing such an agreement, it's important to work out what we're prepared to put on the table. What are we prepared to open up our market to from China, and what would we get in exchange? So I think his word on that was that negotiations are ongoing on that front. And it does seem like it's a fairly recent development. And I think perhaps not opening the floodgates instantly is a good approach.
Right. But we're still getting warnings in the interim. Jobs are on the line. The Reserve Bank's also said, given like sort of a future estimate of us losing 0.65 percentage GDP growth, that's a potentiality that I read. And thousands of jobs, obviously, that could be affected, as you know, we've already seen the reports of companies losing future contracts, if you will. What else do we know about what we could possibly expect?
So, I mean, I've read quite a few headlines on that. I think the one, and might not be 100%, but I think the word was that there were 35,000 jobs on the line. I think it's perhaps slightly too early to
I'd agree.
Put out a number like that. We still got to weigh the comparative tariff, how our biggest competing countries, what sort of tariff they got. And I suppose it's a bit of a wait and see for the initial impact that the 30% will have from Friday. But yes, definitely not a good thing. And I think we should be circumspect of estimates at this stage on the exact scale of the impact. On the GDP front, what we can say is that US trade, our exports to the US account for roughly just over 2% of our GDP. So
it's not chump change.
It's not chump change. And 2% is maybe more meaningful than most people realize. And the good news is that 35% of that, based on Minister Lamola's estimation, is totally exempt. But that's the chunk. That 2.2% is the chunk that will get eaten into.
Yeah, because some of the economists were saying, actually, just start new markets. But actually, it's quite difficult.
It takes time. It takes years.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of barriers often that makes it not just a click of the fingers. So from that front, the agricultural guys are the worst, or specifically citrus, because it's harvest season right now.
New EU rules.
But if it's harvest season right now, and you might not be getting such strong demand from the US, what do you do with all your nachis, which are sitting there, and you can't necessarily find a new market for them instantly? So that's another layer, is those companies with perishable goods. It's just that much more urgent for them to open up new markets, and it's not something that happens quickly.
To quote Nicolas Cage from Face Off, nachi, I can eat a nachi for hours. I can come and dump those nachis there at my house.
There we go.
I love a good nachi. But jokes aside, jobs are on the line. We've seen those early reports. There's no deal on the table. Before I end off on the final question, just very quickly, I mean, a lot of this is political, I think, obviously, because of that unprecedented trip to the White House and, the false narratives. We've also seen reports Trump administration wants, obviously changes to BBBE legislation here. So a lot of the other things are veering into other sectors of life as we know it in this country. And of course, the axing of Andrew Whitfield, for whatever reasons, still optically, there's been, a GNU that can't sit well in certain situations. Your views on the political side of things? Do you feel that, like economist Avi Rutt, he's one of those proponents that think a lot of this is just down to politics?
I struggle. So, of course, the US and Trump in particular has made it clear he's angered by things like triple BEE. And there's no doubt that that has played a factor in the negotiations and the US's openness to negotiations with us. The counterpoint to that is, of course, that there's many countries around the world who've been slapped with tariffs. I mean, Switzerland, I must profess that I don't keep up with their day-to-day politics, but I doubt they've got anything as sensational as what we've going on. And they've got a higher tariff than us. If Switzerland is getting a higher tariff than us, our 30% surely can't be explained by domestic politics alone. So, of course, it seems an unavoidable conclusion that it's not helping us. But it's worth keeping that perspective that there are numerous other countries around the world who perhaps don't have don't have policies like that anger the US and have been slapped with a high tariff.
Friday's coming. It's going to have all these negative ripple effects, maybe perhaps in the short term. You know, we have different economists with different takes saying, don't overestimate it. You know, for example, South Africa's agriculture sector is still very robust. Your one DLS Schlobos, agri-economists, I really respect him and love his views. And he's often, you know, trumpeted in the major headlines when we talk about agriculture. He's just like, hey, like you, William, saying, wait and see. Let's not jump to any conclusions. We're not doing ourselves any favor by, you know, sort of being in this negative echo chamber, if you will, right? We have to see how this thing goes. What would you, though, say to Johnny in Green Market Square in Cape Town right now, your average South African? What would be your thing to say to him on Friday midday about this entire situation, William?
Don't panic, Johnny boy. So I think in the short run, on the consumer side, my understanding is South African consumers won't feel this straight away. If anything, goods that we used to send to the US, we might not have a home for in the US anymore, which might bring the prices down of certain goods for the local market. So the consumer side, it's to me, it becomes difficult to get into the second and third round effects beyond that. But the only thing is, if Johnny is somebody who works in a Mercedes factory, or a shipbuilder, or if he's a citrus picker,
or a door
or
manufacturer,
a door manufacturer who sends doors to the US. Those are the people who really need to worry now, because there can be quite quick effects from the 30% for people involved in those industries. So I think that's probably the clearest message we can send on a sort of consumer side at this stage, is there shouldn't be instant of like price increases for goods in South Africa. It's always worth remembering it's a tax that has to be paid by US importers, but it's never quite as simple as that. It ripples through in different ways. But yes, more so one to watch out for if you're in one of those industries that is reliant on trade with the US.
They should really call it the William Brederud and Graham Robenheimer show, because I always love having you on, William.
Thanks, Graham.
It's one of the most read articles on News 24 Business at the moment. US tariffs, South African government may relax competition rules for exporters, written by William. And if you want even more detail than before, we have the big, beautiful Trump tariff explainer from a couple of weeks back. If you want to go listen to it, it's still very viable. We go into even more detail about exempt tariffs, exempt industries, and what that might mean for us down the line. Here we sort of just updating our listeners, I think, right, William, as we go. And then who knows? Friday, maybe this whole show would have been scrapped and we have
Yeah.
a deal. Who knows?
Well, what a wonderful world that would be. So let's hope.
That's William Breder. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and chat soon.
Cool. Thank you, Graham.